Hello, everyone. My name is Joey Veltkamp. I just opened up my second solo exhibition at Greg Kucera Gallery in Seattle, Washington. The show will be up through April 17th, and Greg is open normal hours during the exhibition, Tuesday through Saturday, 10:30 to 5:30. I've been feeling a little under the weather this week, so I didn't think it was a good idea to come in and do an artist talk. So instead, we're doing a video walkthrough, and hopefully it'll be just as entertaining. So basically, I used the idea of Lumberton, Washington as a metaphor for the small towns or the larger towns. I guess, many people consider Seattle a provincial town. So I think that it's an amalgamation of Montana or Bozeman, Spokane, Snoqualmie, Bremerton, all these small places. I consider myself a queer folk artist with a little wink to my favorite gay folk artist, Jeffrey Mitchell. I think since I've been making quilts for the past probably 8 years mostly, I'm kind of considered a quilter. I think of them more as soft paintings only because I think that the quilting tradition is so specific and so historical. And I definitely identify, am in complete awe of everyone who came before me. I came to make quilts a different way. I had a rough year, and I guess before that even, let's start back, is I had spontaneously began drawing blanket drawings, 100 plus, maybe 150. Basically, I just started making more and more and more of these drawings, and then I hit 40 and a rough patch and didn't think I'd make it, and I started thinking about legacy work and what I was leaving behind. And I always joke, you can't hug a painting. Technically you can. So I thought about my mom, and it kind of broke my heart that I wouldn't be leaving her anything behind. And so I began making these quilts / comforters, literally to comfort my loved ones when I was gone. When you first walk in is a flag that has long drapey things hanging from it. I thought it was obvious that flag is on fire. The piece is called Self-Portrait as America 2020. And I've done other pieces about being on fire, but there's just so much rage in America in 2020, rightfully so. Some of the other pieces that are in the show, let's see here. We've got a piece called Lunch at Ivar's, and that's this seagulls all kind of flying around in rainbow colors in kind of different directions. And it specifically reminds me of a moment as a kid when I visited Seattle. And I think every kid who visits Seattle probably has this moment where they go down to the waterfront to Ivar's and lose their fucking mind when like a million seagulls attack them for their food. And I just remember it even now, such a oh my God, is it safe? Is it fun? Is it cool? What is this? It was just so weird. And I think it's a universal experience, right? Everyone has joy from that. Feeding the seagulls, there's, I don't know, it's just something fun and sweet. And so I wanted to do something around that. The Seattle waterfront's become more important to us than ever because that's our approach to Seattle now. Now that we ferry over, anytime we come, we get the best view of Seattle, because I'll tell you, if you haven't come into Seattle at night from the ferry, it looks like $1 million city, a $10 million city. It's amazing. And so, and also what a gift that literally Pioneer Square is right there. I moved to Seattle in 1996 and lived there for about 20 years before my husband and I relocated to Bremerton, Washington, which is a 17-mile ferry ride through the Salish Sea in what has to be the most beautiful waters of the world, I feel like. We've seen orcas multiple times, seals, anything, we see it. I'm heavily influenced by my local environment. If you're around me, I'm influenced by you. And sometimes it's overwhelming. That's kind of why we're hermits out here. But one of the things that I was immediately struck by when we moved here, and you'll see this a lot in my first solo show at Greg's, is the influence of the actual natural environment around us. Not only the natural environment, but also the man-made environment, right? If you haven't been to Bremerton, Bremerton is a Navy town, and right from the second you pull up on the ferry, you see a bunch of warships. You see the shipyard, where they actually work on military ships, and that and probably the ferry system are probably the two most identifiable things about Bremerton, in addition to its amazing people. My husband and I, Ben Gannon, also an artist, immediately fell in love with the town and the people and everything about it. It's such a contrast to Seattle. After 20 years in Seattle, we kind of woke up one day and thought, my God, it got really big. I hadn't even been paying attention, I think. And so I was looking forward to going somewhere a little slower, someplace with a little less action. And Bremerton is definitely that place. Depending on when you come out to visit, sometimes you won't see anyone in the 10-minute walk to our house. And other times you'll see lots of people. So it's a very different city than Seattle is. And one of the things that's remarkably different is also the amount of flags, because it is a Navy town. And so I think a lot of my work this past year has been past couple of years, influenced by flags. I don't know how it can't be, both because of my local geographic area, but also because of what's going on in the world right now. I made one piece in 2018 that's in the show called The Blue Angels. I'm not a big Blue Angels fan. Many people in my life are. My son is a huge Blue Angels fan. Anytime you see a bunch of flags in one area, I think it's alarming, but I'm also obsessed with the flag, right? When we moved to Bremerton and we started taking walks, you see it everywhere. You see it on houses, you see it on cars. You see it in the back of pickup trucks, right? You see it in Democrats, liberals, progressives, Trumpies, our neighbors pulled down their American flag during 2020 and hung it up a Trump flag, and it was just like, wow. And then I think the original genesis of the flag pieces were Colin Kaepernick. The idea that peacefully protesting a flag could be offensive, but carrying a flag in your pickup truck that's disintegrating from dust and exhaust and choking on, anything, just choking on rain and everything is that's patriotic. And it just seems, again, kind of that Blue Angels piece, weird. My work kind of jumps around, I think, to some people. It's heavily influenced by historical depression, current depression. It's kind of the bedrock of the work. And I think of it kind of as the art making process. I think of it as kind of transfiguration, turning that sadness into something a little more positive, a little more, maybe something relatable to other people. If you drive around rural areas a lot, you might see hay for sale signs. And I remember it was probably several years ago, driving back from Schlam with Ben, and it just kept cracking me up. And I think he might have even said "Hey for sale." And I just thought that was so funny because it's just a dumb joke, right? And the actual joke is, what's a gay horse say? Hey. And I don't know why it cracks me up so much, because I always think of horses as gay. Just because I love them and they're so awesome, but also, for complicated reasons, horses are gay, and I love the idea of gay horses. So this specific piece is made out of work clothes. A lot of these quilts I've been making have been work clothes from flea markets. They're stained or have holes, and so you buy them and then you can cut them up and kind of get another purpose out of them. And I love the dichotomy of work clothes, meaning Carhartt, and also Dockers, right? For me, work clothes were never Carhartt. I adopted the brand to kind of fit in when I came out, and I butched up, started smoking, wearing Carhartts, drinking bourbon, but it was never authentic. It was performative, a lot of queer people have to figure out. But the Dockers were authentic. Those were my work clothes when I'd go down to real networks or down working at the .coms. And I like the idea that things contain multitudes, the idea that work clothes can have many meanings, or that the idea of a rainbow can represent queer people, but also Christians. I think that life, I think one of my biggest frustrations is growing up and being told that life is so black and white. And then obviously growing up and realizing, oh my God, nothing's black and white. Everything is gray, everything. My father was the manager of a small grocery store, well, not small, in Albertsons growing up. Like my entire life, I've known him, my stepfather. He did this. And I'm heavily influenced by grocery stores. My mother is an obsessive shopper, and we would go all day. It literally took us all day. We had to park the cart in the freezer section and take lunch with father, and then we would go back and finish shopping up and down every aisle. And if I wanted to go and get my marshmallow cream, I had to go because she wouldn't get it otherwise. So it was kind of torturous. But I think one thing that kind of got burnt in is the signage. And back then, Albertsons would hire individual sign makers at each store, if you can even believe that. And so all the signage would be homemade, like all the aisles, all the penguins and polar bears in the freezer aisle, hand painted. And that was a huge influence on me, both because as a big, hairy, bearded gay man who loves food, a little bacchanal, the grocery store and food and drawing and art all kind of got lumped together. And so I think that text ended up coming into my work in a way like that, kind of a subconscious influence that probably connects to nostalgia in a weird way and things like that. And one of our favorite places in Bremerton is the walk over the bridge to Manette. Manette is a neighborhood and community, part of Bremerton, but with its own independent identity. And it's now gone. It's been temporarily taken down because there's going to be building remodel. But if you look at Thelma and Vern's piece, this was the first thing we saw from the ferry, practically. The bridge is the first thing we saw from the ferry. But this is the first thing you see when you enter Manette. And it's been here forever, 60 plus years. And it's just this beautiful vintage sign. But I'm just such a sucker for beautiful vintage signs. Out here in Bremerton, on one of the main streets, there's a florist shop that always has on its sign, Shelley, come in for your free rose. And apparently it's a tradition of florists. Not everyone does it, obviously, but for certain people, they would give away a free rose for the name of the week. I thought like, oh my gosh, it's never Ben. And so I ended up making a Valentine for my husband, Ben. For Ben, come in for your free rose of the week. So that's what that piece is about. If you've been to Bremerton, there's a good chance that you got here on a ferry. And Washington State is the fourth largest ferry system in the world. And ferry life is amazing. There's nothing, well, there's plenty I don't like about it, but most of it's just amazing. And so one of the most charming things about ferry life is you get on and they start doing the announcements. And then invariably after the announcements, there's going to be, well, the owner of insert your car name here, please come back and come back to your car and secure your car alarm because it's going to keep going off during the ride. And if you ride enough, it happens all the time. And it's just a funny joke because it's almost always, it looks like really fancy cars, right? And so like the first time I heard it, I thought it was so adorable that I started making a list. And I don't know, there's probably, 50, 75. I'm not sure how many things are finally on the list, but there are some luxury made cars that have really good alarms. And yeah, so anyway, I just thought that this list was funny. And I wanted to kind of push myself and do something different and make them in satin. And I love the long hanging threads. That's how you can tell I'm not a quilter, because quilters, I trim them up a lot more. And I like them long and hanging, almost like a fringe. Or, if you look at the seagull piece, it becomes this otherly dimension, like either it's rain or it's atmospheric haze or it's queerness. I think by adding them, it just shows there's some kind of magical thing happening. So yeah, but it also differentiates me from the traditional quilting people. I love the calligraphic way that it stays on the fabric. I just think it's gorgeous. So the name Lumberton, Washington, comes from David Lynch's 1986 film, Blue Velvet, which was based on a fictitious town called Lumberton, but there actually is also a real town called Lumberton. But anyway, this fictitious town of Lumberton, Washington, I'd like to read a quote by Nathan Weinbender, and it says that it's set in a small fictional town called Lumberton, an eerily cheery suburb of white picket fences, perfectly manicured lawns, and American flags. But that wholesomeness is merely a disguise for the decay and perversion lurking beneath its surface, and Blue Velvet soon descends, much like Twin Peaks, into a surreal nightmare world. One of my favorite pieces in the show is a piece called Little Versailles. It's an image of our backyard during 2020, and Ben's sister, I mentioned, moved in with us for a little while, and she got us one of those above ground blue pools that no one could get this summer. And, it was just literally the only good part of the day, right? It was like, oh my God, it's going to be swim time later. I can have a beer in the pool and float around and get a moment's joy, incredibly blessed and so thankful. But also it goes back to my days of swimming in Lake Washington and when I used to always be in there with a beer. And so I just love laying on a unicorn floaty drinking a beer in the afternoon. So I think that literally got me through 2020. So I love the idea. I wanted to kind of build a show around that idea of home as paradise during 2020, but obviously things got a lot more political, and even though I wanted to make a really sweet show, I think it ends up always more political than maybe I would have pushed it, which is a good thing.